I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody who's here today for this special press conference. I also want to kind of preface things with, unfortunately, there's some information that this was also for public input. I'm open to having any public input, but this was not scheduled as a town hall meeting or a public forum. It was a press conference to make sure information got out on issue 3, which is the income tax increase that's on the ballot initiative coming up this May. But again, there will be time if anybody does have questions. But this is more informative at this point in time. I am currently working with the Athens County League of Women Voters to see if we can't have here in the city an evening event to where it's more timely for anyone who's, yeah, I'm getting some thumbs up in the audience, recognizing, and I recognize this right away, I have a weekly update or press conference at 2 o'clock every Wednesday, so it's not atypical for me to host a press conference in this time frame, which is televised live. It's also live streamed on Facebook as well as on the city's YouTube account. So this will be on heavy rotation, as I've asked. There's going to be this one. There will be a second one at 2 p.m. on the 14th. But again, working with the League of Women Voters in Athens County to have one at the community center and just trying to figure out what is the date that works best for everyone. I also want to introduce to those of you who are here, or actually people who don't need any introduction, we have the city auditor, Kathy Hecht, who's here, as well as our city treasurer, Josh Thomas, who's with us. I'm looking around this room. I've been doing press conferences for going on 9.5 years, almost 10 years, and this is the largest audience we've had in quite some time, which means something. I want to start with a few statements, opening statements, then I have some graphs that I want to show everyone who's here, and that is that, you know, the general fund comes from our city's income tax. This is the largest portion of revenue that comes in via the income taxes in the city, which is currently 1.95. That also includes several levies that we have, the safety levy, the Arts, Parks, and Recreation levy, our street rehab. Those are levies that have time frames attached to them. Our general fund, the income tax that comes in is 1.65%, and has been that for almost a decade now, as we look forward. So this is where the general revenue stream comes in that is used for operations in the city. It's where the salaries come from for our employees, healthcare benefits, and things of that nature. The state of Ohio, over the past 15 years, has seen a 24% economy increase in revenues that are coming in. The city of Athens and Athens County, that income revenue has only grown by 8.6%. So it pales in comparison to what we see at the state with their economic growth. Ohio University is clearly our largest tax-paying entity for the city of Athens. And when you adjust for inflation with what comes in from Ohio University, which is well over 4,000 employees, when we compare 2008 to the present, in 2008, the withholdings were about 42% coming from Ohio University for income tax. Currently, we're looking at, this is 2023, we're looking at 29% revenue coming in. So our largest employer, we've seen a drop in income tax that's coming into the city. Some of the other things that the city has to pay into, which is the fire and police pension fund. Currently, we're paying 24% that comes in for the fire employees that goes out for that pension fund, covering our firefighters. And then for our police, it's about 19.5%. While the state level, it failed to increase both of them to 26%, which would have been a huge impact, have had a huge impact on the city's revenue in terms of where money is going. It failed, but recognizing the state legislators that they're going to go and attempt to do this again, whether it's going up to 26% for both police and fire, or if it's bringing parity to where the two funds come up to 24%. Again, it's still going to have a significant hit on revenues coming into the city. The other thing that we've recognized is that over the past 15 years, our healthcare costs have gone up, and we're seeing this everywhere in all sectors. For the city of Athens, it's increased by 58% over those 15 years, adjusted for inflation. And this is just keeping pace with inflation at this point in time with these increases. An increase of 0.3% income tax will move the city from 1.95 to 2.25%. Which will bring in for the city about $2.6 million annually, which will be enough to cover our inflationary increases that we've been seeing since the last income tax increase, which was in 2016. To give you an idea as to what that looks like, for someone who's making $50,000 a year, it would be an increase in their income tax of about $150 annually. With that percentage increase to their taxes here in the city of Athens. A couple slides I want to show the viewing audience, but also showing those of you, and I know this is really probably difficult to see to some degree, but you can see the trend line for those increases. The red line on the top is the total budget, where we've seen a significant increase from 2023 to 2024 in terms of our total budget expenses. A lot of that, again, is salary and healthcare increases that we've had to budget for. The blue line, that is the salary increases, and then the green line on the bottom, that is our operating budget with things that we typically have to do, whether it's equipment, whether it's paying our utility bills, as we pay utilities as well. If you notice in 2013, or 2023 rather, you see on the operating budget side that there was a drop in there. To explain that a little bit more, in 2022, we were able to pay off the remaining balance on a fire pumper truck, which are extremely expensive pieces of apparatus, as well as the parking meters uptown. And then we also saw that we weren't, when we were bracing for refunds that had to be issued by the auditor's office, when we knew that Ohio University, that things were changing in terms of people working from home versus working in the office on campus. And then therefore in 2023, those refunds decreased in terms of what we're paying out. So there was less money there to have to worry about in the operating budget. But then things in 2024 jumped back up again. Ryan, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to go through these in kind of short order. This is a little bit more granular to give you an idea as to where the our general revenue, where it gets parsed out to. As you can see on this slide, 2016, and this will hold all the way through the subsequent slides, is that the lion's share goes towards the personnel in the police department and the fire department, making up 28 and 24% of the overall budget within the general fund. And then you can see the other departments are hovering around 9% to 4% in terms of the percentage of the general fund that goes there. Ryan, the next slide. Here's 2019. Again, not a lot changing other than the total, which is on the bottom, which is the $16,295,170 and change. Again, the distributions pretty much stayed the same. And if you would go on to the last slide, Ryan, here's 2024. One of the areas where we did see a jump in budgeting is with the court system, which is in the lighter green on the pie chart over on the right-hand side. But everything else in terms of percentage of distribution is pretty much the same, holding the same. And again, the health care benefits are what we've seen a large driver for the increase, because you see from the previous slide, going from 16.2 million to 19.7 million dollars, and a lot of that again is for covering salaries and benefits. In full disclosure, if the levy does not pass, some of the things that we're going to have to look at is, and the treasurer put together a rather interesting chart that was shown to City Council, which was basically looking at revenue and expenses, where we're still ahead of the game when it comes to revenue coming in versus expenses. And hopefully whenever we have scheduled a town hall meeting, we'll bring that data as well. But we're facing a point in time to where those two lines are going to intersect, which means that we are not bringing in enough revenue to cover all of our expenses, and at which point one of the things that we're going to have to start looking at is basically reducing police coverage through attrition with police officers who are looking to retire or are retiring, to not replace them. The same would hold true for the fire department. There are 3 positions in the fire department. We knew this going in, that the positions were funded through a grant from the state. Grants are never a good way to sit there and plan your budgeting process, because grants come and grants go. They're not sustainable. We were fortunate to bring on, knowing that we had retirements coming down the pipeline within the fire department. We did take advantage of these grants to bring people up to speed and make sure that they were Class 2 firefighters going through the fire academy and getting the training they need, to where when we do start to lose firefighters due to retirement, we have younger firefighters who are fully trained and ready to meet our minimum staffing for the fire department moving forward in time. But attrition is another thing. Reductions in street maintenance and annual paving is something that we would have to look at in terms of ways in which to curb costs, and then other unspecified service reductions in the future, likely some of those being in the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department, but also elsewhere. I'm going to put a pause there with the information that I've just provided to you, and I'm going to start with the media first, if the media has any questions that they would like to ask, and then I'm going to open it up to anyone who's here today who has a question that you would like me to address. Seeing a big no from our one media outlet that's here today. If you would like to come up to the dais, or the podium rather, state your name, your address, and we will attempt to field your question for you.
Hi, Eric Lee. I'm from 7 3rd Street in Athens. One of the reasons that people thought that this was more of a town hall thing is the thing that was posted on Facebook says the mayor's inviting members of the press and the public to attend these sessions and participate in open dialogue. Yeah. So when I hear that, it sounds like we're invited to speak. Yeah. The other thing is you talked about reducing street care and maintenance. That seems like in the long term that would cost the city more money. Mm-hmm. I also noticed that the mayor's office budget is over $1 million a year now. Mm-hmm. Would that be a spot that would be more reasonable to cut than potholes?
So out of the mayor's budget? Yeah. Well, there's a lot of areas on here where there's areas where, if we have to, that we will. The mayor's budget unto itself covers all of my staff that works in the mayor's office. So it's the service safety director, the deputy service safety director, the city planner, the HR director. And so there's a lot more there than just the mayor himself.
I'm sure, but yeah, it just seems like fixing potholes is a basic city function. So.
It is a basic city function. Repaving, the repaving program, which I'm really proud of, that we have really been able to amp that up since 2016, covering a lot more miles of street than we had under the previous administration, as well as the underground infrastructure. These are critical assets. But when we're looking at the budgeting, again, everything's in play when it comes to the budgeting here in the city of Athens.
Okay. And, so it's about a 15% increase, is that right?
No.
It's like 15.4% increase in taxes. Going from 1.95 to 2.25 is 15.38?
That's correct, in terms of its increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
But as I indicated before, an increase, or for someone who's bringing in an annual salary of $50,000, we're talking $150 increase in their.
Most people that
What
make
they'd be paying.
$50,000 a year probably can't afford to live in the city at this point, so.
Hello, my name is Aiden Fox. I'm currently an RA in Sergeant Hall, actually. I did have a bit of a longer form here because, just like the previous person, I did have the impression that this was more of like a town hall sort of meeting based on what the City of Athens had put out on Facebook. But I can condense a little bit of what I had here. You've mentioned a couple of times now that the effect of the tax increases on a person making $50,000 a year or more would be fairly negligible. However, the median household income in the county of Athens is actually around $37,000. We are the second poorest county in the state, and the city itself is in the bottom 10 across cities in Ohio when it comes to median income. At the same time, the richest municipalities in the state who have an income tax rate, we're talking Pepper Pike, Mentor, Rocky River, New Albany, so on and so forth, they all have a tax rate of 2%, income tax rate. So I guess my question is, how can we justify being one of the most heavily taxed municipalities in the state, compared to these other municipalities who have a lower income tax rate than we're proposing now?
Yeah, we've looked at comparable municipalities across the state of Ohio, and when it comes to the city income tax, we're in the middle of the pack with everybody. As a matter of fact, we tend to be on the lower side of what is the median for that income tax that is being received for those who issue income taxes. We have always had an income tax here. Well, I say always, for decades now, so.
Right. Now, my numbers could be wrong, but I believe the average income tax rate for municipalities who do have one across the whole state of Ohio is 1.5%. Now, that's the average, and I understand my numbers could be wrong. But generally speaking, the wealthiest municipalities in the state generally don't go much higher over 2%. I believe Bedford might be the highest at like 3%, but even then, they're not one of the wealthiest. So, like I said, when the average, when the median household income in the county is $37,000, and the example you're bringing up is a person making $50,000, I don't think the impact is as little as it's been brought up here, is, I suppose, what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm looking, we put together a graph, basically, or a table that shows different household incomes. And as I'm looking at this, for an income in that 37,000 range, it's an increase in taxes of $112 a year.
Great. However, Athens is also, pretty heavily regulated regardless. I think on average, most of our taxes are higher than other counties, higher than other municipalities. I'm trying to see if I have more information regarding that here. I also have concerns regarding, the city's handling of public projects in recent record. As of right this second, last time I checked, the new firehouse that was being constructed is about 20% over budget. Last I checked, I believe that was according to the Athens Messenger. We had to pass a levy to help pay for debt on that project, and then there was also the recent $700,000 loss related to the firehouse project due to an email scam. I'm just generally concerned with what the city will do with the funds that are raised, and also the justification for raising them in the first place. And with that, I will concede what I have. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Marianne Kalashevsky. Kathy, hello. Mayor Patterson, hello. I am here because I don't actually live within the city of Athens, but I do live within the township. I work within the city of Athens, so I do pay into the city income taxes, as well as I was a part of this sewer expansion project, which cost a lot more than what was actually projected for us, and has affected my taxes. And one of the reasons I'm concerned about the potential tax increase is I'm concerned as a former CFO and someone who knows about internal controls and the way that money should flow, is we're not doing this as a way to make up around the $750,000 that was transferred probably to, I don't know, some, I guess, a legal entity that was like scamming, phishing for, the $750,000 of city funds that I'm assuming is not going to be recoverable, especially if we did not follow our own internal controls. It's my understanding that insurance companies won't reimburse you for, not following your own policies and procedures. So can you ensure me that this is not a way to try and make up? Because $1 million, I mean, that's $750,000. That's a lot of funds, taxpayer money, I'm assuming, that just kind of came up, like missing through, I understand transactions happen, but that's why internal controls are in place, especially for such a large sum. And my concern is, once I saw this come out, especially given the taxes that I already pay, to me it was kind of concerning. Is this a way to try and make up some of those funds? And then how are we going to ensure that the internal controls are in place, that things like this aren't going to happen again? I mean, that, to me, as a former CFO, that there is no way that a payment like that would have left my office without, like, the executive director and myself signing off on it.
Let me start with just the issue that's been reported on, and I'll certainly say more about it. Well, I'll say what I can about it.
Okay.
Is that, the city was the victim of an elaborate scam. And it's an ongoing investigation. It's actually like 6 investigations that are going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. Some money has been identified, for sure. So that's all I'm going to say at this point in time about the actual scam that we fell victim to. What I will say is no is the answer to this income tax increase, is to make up for that. As I had indicated, the revenue that would come in is for us to keep pace with inflation. The cost of the previous individual talking about the expenses of the fire station headquarters, or, and you had indicated the expenses, the overrun for the sewer project. So much of that has to do with, again, inflationary pressures and material costs. Labor costs are going up as well. If anybody's been watching the stock market of late, that's not changing anytime soon.
No,
yeah, we're going to unfortunately see more of that rather than less of that moving forward. But the materials costs for the fire station headquarters, those were all inflationary pressures that were coming to bear on material. And at this point, for us, for the city of Athens, to have this income tax increase, it's to keep up with inflation that we're all experiencing, across the board. The city's experiencing it as well.
Are you able to name some other cities in the state of Ohio that have the same income tax rate that you're proposing, or a higher one?
We've got that list. I know that the Deputy Service Safety Director has pulled that together. I don't have it at my fingertips, but there are several municipalities that are in the 2% plus range.
Okay, because I would, as someone who works for an anti-poverty organization for over 13 years, knowing that the sewer project pushed people further and further out into the county because it's expensive to live in the city of Athens, and then even with the or the bag ban, and I understand, like, environmentally that was great, but also what you're doing is increasing the cost for people. The only place to shop is in Athens proper or whatnot. If you live in the further outlying areas, they already have to drive further to get their groceries and things like that, and then you're just increasing the costs again. Like, I just want to make sure that we are keeping in mind that Athens County is one of the poorest counties in the state of Ohio, and that we are not just saying, okay, there's a privileged number of people that live in the city of Athens and they can afford this increase while others can't. And I digress now.
My name is Barbara Stout, and I've lived in Athens most of my life, except for a big period when I lived in New York, but I was raised here. There's a fundamental flaw in what you're saying, because you keep, when you say it's only $115 more per year, that's more per year, on top of what's already being paid in one of the poorest counties. And as a business owner, I know that I really try hard to pay my people fairly. I only have a few employees, and I try to pay them fairly, and I try to give, some sick days and all that kind of stuff. It's hard. It's hard. This is not a friendly environment for small business owners. Athens, it just isn't. And my own personal property taxes have gone up $2,000 in the last year. Now, I own 2 properties, and I have family members living in them, but it's, historically, the voters of Athens are extremely generous. We always pass things. We support the library. We support elder services. We support almost everything passes. The schools. We have a very high property tax rate. It's just going through the roof. And now, this income tax rate, from what I could see when I looked on the site and looked at all the different cities, and was pretty close to what that other guy said, we're up on the level with someplace like Arlington. We're not Arlington. We're one of the poorest counties in Ohio. There are some very privileged, very, very highly paid people, mostly working for the university, not exclusively, and everybody else is struggling, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to live here. And I think that we need to see some real granular numbers that proves that there's real belt tightening going on here. It's not just asking Athens citizens once again to fork over. Exactly how is this money going to be used? Yes, your expenses are going up. Our expenses are going up, too. All of us. And if you're sitting here right now and you're my age, you're not that far off, we're watching our retirements being wiped out in real time with what's happening with the stock market. This is not a good time to be asking people to pay even more. And I understand economic pressures. As a small business owner, I really do. Boy, would I like to just tell people, sorry, I'm going to cut you. I really try to maintain my contract with them for whatever I promised them with hours, even if it's cutting into my bottom line. But at some point, you have to budget. And I would like to see how the city is actually doing that, actually belt tightening, as well as asking us to belt tighten and give you more money.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Andrea Reich. I recently moved into the city, but I've been in the county a long time. Let's leave it at that. I also was a director of a county agency, and the revenue was half of what the city has. But for me, what is really disturbing is the lack of education to our community why we needed this levy. When I ran a levy, we were out 6 months in advance, letting the community know why we needed the levy, where our expenditures went. Early this year, I talked to one of you and said, when are you getting information out? I went to the website. There was nothing on there that I could find related to the city budget, revenue, any of that. I think that is really poor planning. Tomorrow, early voting starts. I sat as a member of the league at 2 council meeting forums. Even the candidates that are on council could not really articulate the need for the revenue, where it was going to be spent. That's really concerning to me. This happened at the levy last fall for Athens City Schools. There was no information. I voted no. First time in my life I voted no on a school levy. We deserve to know what the need is, where it's going. It's real easy to scare us to say we're going to lay off police and fire. I want to know that we're looking at projects. Maybe we need to postpone the armory for a while. But cutting our safety members, to me, is maybe a tactic to scare people, but it should be our last step along the way. I am really glad you're going to do a night forum, because that was going to be my other comment. People on Facebook are saying I'm at work. I love this city. I want to support it, but I want to know and understand before I vote. So thanks.
Anybody else?
One more comment. Eric Lee again. So basically, when a city gets more income tax, it can be done through raising taxes or increasing the tax base. What is the city doing to try to expand the tax base as opposed to increase the tax burden?
Well, one of the things that the city did, I remember distinctly when the CEO for Memorial Health Systems came and said, hey, we'd like to build potentially, looking at site selection for a emergency room hospital or emergency hospital here in the city of Athens. And my hand shot up so fast, it was like, absolutely. That came to fruition. We now have Memorial Healthcare System that is here, generated, as I was told, 160 new jobs with an average salary coming in at $130,000. And so, it was with support certainly from the city's administration and with my staff to sit there and figure out how best to do this on the site that they were choosing. Had a lot of hoops to jump through. Always open and looking for businesses to come into town who are interested in Athens.
Has the increase in salary from Marion Memorial been factored into the projected budget for the upcoming years?
It has, I believe.
Okay. And then you said that Marion Memorial came to basically the city and suggested we want to be here. What is the city doing to try to draw people in as opposed to just being receptive when someone decides to already come here?
Well, I don't know if you're following or not, and that's okay. That's kind of irrelevant. But, my role now as the president of the National League of Cities, I'm constantly getting the voice of Athens out there to everybody and anyone to try and attract them. I would contend there's a lot of people in that arena, so it's not just the mayor's office. It's funny, when I became mayor in 2016, one of the things that was told me, it's not the mayor's job to sit there and be an advocate for economic development. And I said, that doesn't jive with me. Mm-hmm. It's something that I'm very keen on. Like them or not, it was under my administration that Menards was interested in coming into the city of Athens, which has created a large number of jobs here in the city, with them now having a home out on East State Street. I understand that certain people don't like big box industry coming into the city of Athens. Okay, well, those are jobs at the end of the day. In looking at Ohio Health's expansion to where now they've partnered with Nationwide Children's. I was working with both the current president of Oblenis Hospital and the past president of Oblenis Hospital, saying we're missing a real niche here that could be a centralized area in Southeast Ohio for peds and for NICU and PICU, for neonatal infant care, as well as pediatric health care. And now that's slowly starting to happen to where you're going to see more people that work in that sector at Oblenis Hospital. Again, it was on my encouragement that we need to jump into that space when it comes to healthcare within our region. But I would also contend that we have the Athens County Economic Development Council. This is exactly what that group does. I'm on the board for the EDC. I would say the Chamber of Commerce has an absolute role to play. And I know that we have the CEO, president of the chamber here with us today. We had another individual who was here. I don't know if he's here anymore, but I would contend that it's a little bit odd, but it's what we do is Convention and Tourism Bureau has a role to play. I'm also the board president for ORCA, the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia. and I've been involved in that since its inception back in 2017, to sit there and say, wouldn't it be grand if we had 88 miles of purpose-built, all-terrain mountain bike trail? And it's not in our, it's on our backyard, but it doesn't touch the city of Athens. But for me, as an economic driver, to think this could generate more businesses wanting to come into Athens that are going to cater to soon-to-be 88 miles of mountain biking trail. One of the stories that I really enjoy telling was sitting on the patio at the tap room one afternoon and looking over at a couple of people that are huddled under, it was pouring outside, huddled with blankets around them or under the shade sail at the time, and leaned over and go, well, you came prepared with beach towels because we're all sitting out in the rain. Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, we were here riding on the Bailey Trail System. They said the most impressive trail system, this is going back when there was 30 miles of trail, nowhere near what it is now. And started chatting, and then all of a sudden the people said, well, we got to take off. They backed up to the loading dock and loaded 2 or 3 cases of Jackie O's beer in the back, and off they went back to Chagrin Falls.
Nice.
That's what all these things play into. And so you asked what my role is.
The city in general, but I mean, I love Athens. Athens is special. Anyone who's been here for any period of time knows that we're an awesome, great community. And I think in general, the city has done a pretty decent job. Although I think one area where the city falls a little short is just communication. Like, be a champion for the things that you guys do well. Tell your story a little bit better, and I think that you'll get better community involvement. So, thank you,
Eric. I appreciate that, and I agree with you.
I have one short. Barbara Stout. The issue is, it's great that all these jobs are coming in. It really, okay, and we've got all these people with Marietta, which is my hospital, my health provider, but we're still one of the poorest areas in Ohio. Why can't this income tax be graduated? Why can't it be something, $50,000 a year is not a lot, and a lot of people in this town are living on a lot less. The average is 37, and it's regressive because that 15% means a hell of a lot more to someone who's only making $35,000 or $40,000 or less than it does to someone who's making $130,000. So I'm asking why isn't this more structured?
I'm Emerson Young. I go here to Ohio University. My father works for the land bank up in Sussex County. He's the chairman of it. He works for the city of Athens sometimes, actually. And he goes and gets grants from the state, and they get from the governor. Have you considered going to Governor DeWine? I understand you're a Democrat, he's a Republican, but he's very, very nice to a lot of Democrat-friendly areas in the state. He got elected by 66% there. In fact, he almost won the county. So have you considered maybe going to get more money from Governor DeWine or from state legislators?
We have. Here's the issue, and I have a good relationship with Governor DeWine. I do. And now Senator Husted, when John Husted was the lieutenant governor for the state of Ohio. The grants are wonderful, when you can apply for them. But if you look at the way grants are structured, they're not operational in nature. They're going to be for projects. A comment came up earlier about the Armory, about street projects and things of that nature. Those are grant funded by and large. To cover them. The Armory, that project unto itself, we were able to put together a pretty amazing capital stack of grants. Some of it came from Governor DeWine, some of it came from the Governor's Office of Appalachia, John Kerry, for funding to bring that back to life again. But the funding doesn't go into operational needs. I would have to say the same holds true for our Arts, Parks, and Recreation levy, as well as the fire or the safety levy. Those are not operational levies. Those are for infrastructure, they're for facilities. We do go after grants at the state level and the federal level all the time. But again, if you look at the way those grants are structured, you can't sit there and fund positions off of them, nor would you ever want to, because what happens when that grant sunsets and you've used it, and now you have to figure out, how am I going to pay for someone who was hired on that grant? It's just that's not doing proper business, to sit there and hinge things upon that. But I appreciate your comment. But again, I have a great relationship, I contend, with the governor's office at this point in time. And we have asked for funding, and we've received funding, in particular from the Department of Transportation, or ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, which is where we see a lot of the money that comes in for our street infrastructure, or OPWC, which is the Ohio Public Works Commission, to fund, again, underground infrastructure or road improvement projects. But again, you can't, that funding cannot be used to pay one's salary.
Okay, thank you.
But thanks for the input. I mean, that's. All right. Well, and again, I am apologizing to you and to anyone who's watching in terms of any miscommunication about this being a public forum or a town hall meeting. That was not the intent. The intent was to have something that we could get out to where now it'll be on heavy rotation, to where people who choose to watch it can watch it. I would encourage all of you to sit there and ask people to watch it. We are still planning to have a town hall meeting, again, as I'd indicated on the front end of this meeting, working with the League of Women Voters to host something to where it will be at a much more appropriate time, to where it wouldn't be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll be, probably 6:30, 7 o'clock. Don't hold me to that, but that's typically when we have the candidate forums or issue forums. And Andrea Reich, I want to acknowledge your comments. I don't disagree with you that, that this information could have gotten out a lot sooner with a lot more information at hand. But there was just a lot of moving pieces to everything else. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just acknowledging the fact that you raised that point, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Again, stay tuned on when the town hall meeting will occur to just continue to discuss issue 3 for the city of Athens. Anything from the auditor you want to mention? Anything, or from the treasurer?
I mean, the only thing that came to mind as we were talking today is I think I appreciate the second person's comments that of doing the research and looking at other towns. One thing to just keep in mind when you look at the rated other towns is to also look at that median income. Because again, we are 37,000. It's easy just to think, how nice would it be if our median income was 50,000? Then all of a sudden we do have more money that comes into the city. So when you do compare, because I did the same thing in the fall, we had these conversations in the fall, like, what would the increase be? And I kind of did myself. I looked at other towns. But one thing to look at when I would say, wow, this town is a little bit lower, you could easily see that they had a much higher average income. Maybe they had a lot more industry in the area. There's a lot of factors that go into that as to why they could have a little bit lower rate. So again, that's just something that came to mind. I think it was kind of already brought up when we talk about economic development, that's one way to increase things. So keep that in mind when you're comparing to different cities and things like that. So.
I made a lot of notes. I'm just going to pass them on to the mayor so you can come to his next one and hear my comments. Unless there's something somebody wants to ask me specifically, but yeah, there's a lot of things to take into account when you look at this from my aspect. I think we have made some cuts. I think everything's very expensive. I think everyone knows a few years ago, during and after COVID, the minimum wage was under $8, and all of a sudden now everybody, gets like $12 or $15. That kind of stuff has happened to us in the city too, and it's really mostly for our employees and their benefits, which the mayor mentioned at first, and we have. And yes, we're proud of our support of the Bailey's Trail, but we did reduce our contribution from $90,000 to $25,000 last year because our general fund cash reserve was dipping below what our policy says that we should have. And there's just several other things, but I will say that this income tax increase started through council before the fraud was discovered, period. There was discussion, 6 weeks of the ordinance going through, so it started. And yes, I agree with Andrea, and the mayor has said this too. More information should have been put out then. That was just before Christmas, November and December. Coming back in January, it just, wasn't the first thing somebody thought to work on, I guess. And so we are where we are now. But as the auditor, I will say that we do need this. I guess that some of the projects and things that people talk about are not what this money is for. This is a general tax for what we call a general obligation tax to support the general fund, which is what the pie chart is that the mayor gave you, which our police and fire departments are a huge part of that. Millions of dollars, probably $10 million budget this year for those two departments, let alone everything else that's in there that the city wants. They want their code office, and they want, or need, the mayor, need an auditor, and law director. Our municipal court is over $1 million. It's very expensive, and as we all know, prices have gone up for everybody, everything we get. The other thing about supporting the general fund is we don't have a lot of expenses in our office. It's mostly computers and then people. The majority of this money goes to support, as the mayor said, our operating, which is paying our people to do their job. When we talk about the 2.25% also that we want to go up to, 1.6% of that is what we've had for general operating expenses. And then we have 3.5%, which are levies that the citizens pass for specific projects or improvements. So we have the pool, we have the fire station, I forget offhand what the other one was, and then 0.5% is for recreation. There's always been a push-pull in our Arts, Parks, and Recs department about costs for people to get into the pool, to take advantage of the community center. If we were to charge everyone what we need to support everything, that would eliminate a lot of people's ability to take advantage of those services. So we do support that. They charge for things, but we also support them, subsidize them, I guess you could say. And when we talk about businesses in town, Athens is still only what it is. Our population has been just under 5,000 for a long time of permanent residents, with about 20,000 students. That hasn't changed. I've lived here for 45 years. When I first came, the university had 11,000 students. Then it went up to 13, and it kept growing, and then it hit 20,000, and it's been at that amount for a long time. But it's the student base changes that. And so when you talk about certain services and things around town that are really only permanent residents take advantage of, we're talking about, about 5,000 residents or less. And we can only support so many things in town is what that amounts to. We had a pizza place go out of business. We have a lot of pizza places, and it's just the balance of things that happen. And as the mayor said, he has worked very hard. He's very intense on trying to bring businesses and new things to town. But we can't just keep bringing things and not have the people to take advantage of it. So that's a balance that happens there. And we talk about big stores. No, I was just starting on council when Walmart came in. I was not in favor. However, the people, those big box national stores, restaurants, whatever, employ people from here. People aren't driving from Columbus to work at our, restaurants and shops and businesses. they employ people here, they pay taxes, income taxes on their business, and everyone who works there pays. And a lot of people in the county come to work in Athens because there aren't other jobs around the county that they can get and get paid what you can get in the city. It's just the balance of things and the fact that this general obligation dollars are what support our general funds, and some of these others, we subsidize our transportation program by a small percentage of those funds. We subsidize street fund a little bit, but they have other ways. Most of our projects are highly paid for with grants and sometimes loans, and we can get advantaged of loans from ODOT and OWDA, the water development and things like that. And so that's how we pay for things. And it's just really hard. And I feel like, I don't like it any better than anybody else does. I live in the city. We've been in our house 39 years. And my husband is retired, and I understand what everybody is saying, but I just want to say we wouldn't be asking for it if we didn't think we needed it as far as cutting services. It's up to everybody to decide how they feel about it. But I don't know. I think that's maybe the most I can say right now. And I also think that we need to keep in mind that when we talk about Athens being their ranking in the poverty level is at the county level and not in the city. And that doesn't mean it's okay. Mary Ann, who was here, I know her from being on the Community Action Board for 14 years. That was my first job when I came here, and I worked in every corner of Hocking, Athens, and Perry County, and I know how people in these three counties live down here. And we have to pay for what we have to here. And I don't know. I think that's all I have to say, unless anybody has any questions.
I think I would just add, here's the upside to what we're doing. We're having this today, we're having more later, and the beauty of it is you live in a community where we're still letting you decide. We're seeing in a lot of other ways where sometimes people aren't getting decided anymore, and we're still letting you decide. We'll continue to give the information, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. So.
All right. Thank you all for being here. That concludes this press conference.